In the previous programs, we looked at cognitive learning theories, cognitive load theory, and the related issues. In this program, we look at cognitive flexibility theory. Now, this is something to do with the acquisition of knowledge at different levels. Cognitive flexibility theory focuses more on the advanced knowledge acquisition. It requires massive experience in the field or in the discipline. And the learning stages are three primarily: introductory, intermediary, and advanced stages. Even at the higher education level, when a new subject is introduced, then it goes through these three stages inevitably. A new subject, maybe at the initial sessions, will give you an introduction which doesn't demand much effort on the part of the learner. And the intermediate level will introduce more complexities and more difficult levels of the content. At the advanced stage, you have to deal with extremely complex, abstract, and challenging components of knowledge that will require a kind of flexibility on the part of the learner and also on the part of the teacher or the instructional designer to plan everything and present the content in more than one way, allowing the mind to switch from one to the other and then reach the most complex level, that is the most advanced level of that particular component of knowledge. Now, the learners must attain a deeper understanding of content material, reason with it, and apply it flexibly in diverse contexts. This quotation needs to be elaborated further. What is complexity in terms of concept, and what is ill structured? Because complexities increase when the level moves up. The structure of that content is not that easy, and therefore you leave it loosely structured so that the learner can explore within the text or within the book and then go beyond that confines of that particular book or a lesson or a component given in any format. Say, for example, the video that you are watching. Certain things are stated, the complexities are introduced, something about each component is talked about, but then a lot of things will have to be discovered by the learner. It is a deliberate instructional design part to encourage discovery learning or to construct knowledge. That's the purpose of cognitive flexibility theory. Many concepts interact conceptually, therefore, their patterns of combination are inconsistent in an ill-structured presentation of a content. Deficiencies in acquiring advanced knowledge, for example, in the field of medical sciences. It's all very common because once you graduate with your degrees, every medical student has to practice as a doctor. But then what you have learned is not sufficient. A general exposure to different aspects of medicine or different branches within that, whether it is pediatrics, orthopedics, pathology, or whatever, you know something, but the young doctor cannot practice with utmost confidence with that bit of content or practice. One has to go further. If you don't, then you will go with a lot of misconceptions. What are the misconceptions? Let us take the same biomedical field. Oversimplification of complex and irregular structure, or over-reliance of what is known to you. Education, as Einstein said, is what remains after one has forgotten everything he learned in school, which means you absorb the essence of it, which enables you to move further independently. You don't refer to the notes that you might have taken in your school or in your college. I can give a very interesting anecdote. I had a teacher who taught English literature in our MA class. He used to come with an old diary, and he would open the diary and read out a number of things from that diary on a particular subject. It could be a play or it could be a novel or whatever. Now, one day, we, in a very friendly way, asked him to show the diary. He was very hesitant, but somehow we succeeded in convincing him that we would not pass any negative comments. Then we discovered the diary contained notes which he took when he was a student in his MA. And those notes became the only learning reference materials for him for at least 15 to 20 years at that time. And I am sure he would have retired along with that diary, using that diary in every class, in every year, and teaching every batch of students. Now, this is what one has to forget. If we take Einstein's quotation in the right spirit, education is what remains after one has forgotten everything he learned in school. The essence of education should make you independent. If you are not independent and if you don't have the freedom to explore, then the school education or even college education becomes unhelpful and sterile. Advanced knowledge acquisition is different from introductory learning. It doesn't need much effort at the introductory level. Special characteristics of advanced learning of complex conceptual material have to be recognized. To come back to the biomedical cognition again, misconceptions of various types like oversimplification, etc., will have to be consciously given up, and we need to get into the special areas where so much must have happened over a period of time, and that has to be known. And particularly in the medical field, it's extremely important to update one's knowledge. Otherwise, you would be prescribing medicines which are perhaps completely outdated. So, special characteristics of any subject will have to be identified. And more successful advanced knowledge acquisition is ill structured actually. It's not completely structured, because if you structure it completely, then it imposes a kind of rigidity. And you tend to think that I should not go beyond this. If you look at the rule-bound administrators or rule-bound bureaucrats, perhaps their knowledge is extremely extremely structured. You cannot deviate. And in that their particular domains, that may be quite okay, because otherwise it may be leading to a different kind of consequences. Could be violations, could be defying the rule or cheating the rule. Now that is a different kind of situation where strictly according to the rule, strictly according to law, one has to practice one's own profession. But in learning, in acquiring new knowledge at the advanced level, the knowledge structure should not be so rigid. It must allow space for you to travel further. You take any aspect of science and technology or any branch of human knowledge. Take, for example, the warfare. There was a time when kings and soldiers used bow and arrow. Then they started using swords, spears, and then matchlock guns, rifles, and now it has become so sophisticated that you can operate the weapon system just by sitting in front of a computer. The computer will take care of everything. For example, precise bombing using the missiles or sending the drones to achieve certain targets, hit certain targets and achieve the results. This may not be a very, very appropriate example, but then this is how the complexity develops, and you have to know what it is. And you look at the other side of it, less dangerous, that is rocket technology, cryogenic engines. And you take our own advancement in space science. Now India has become one of the most competent nations in the world in space technology, in remote sensing. How it happened? Because we allowed the content that our scientists had to master to be so open and to follow a different path, discover a more effective path, keeping in view the reality of our economy, the reality of our country, and go for affordable and cheaper technological devices. Chandrayaan, for example, when you look at the cost of Chandrayaan, it was much, much less as compared to the devices designed and used by NASA. So these are only one or two examples to make it simpler to understand. Cognitive flexibility theory uses multiple mental and pedagogical representations, the promotion of multiple alternative systems. So this is inherent in the theory itself, flexibility. What is flexible, for example? We say we must have flexible timings. Suppose I have to come at 9:30 in the morning and leave at 5:30, that is a structured timing. But if you have flexible timings, then you may come maybe at 10 o'clock, or you may come even at 8 o'clock. And you may leave at 5 o'clock, or you may leave at 9 o'clock. Now what does it mean? The timings are flexible, but at the same time, the outcomes are very important. Without these flexibilities, you may not achieve what you intend to achieve. That is why these are very, very important to know how a flexible text can help us acquire a more complex concept, knowledge about the concepts, and acquire different levels of our understanding in that particular field. A computer hypertext approach that implements cognitive flexibility theory can be discussed. Discussion of one concept leading to other concepts embedded with the text, I think you can open up any of the hypertexts where you have hyperlinks. So you are talking about a particular aspect, whether it is in history or economics, and some other concept will be embedded in it. Suppose you want to know more about value of money or inflation, and that particular concept will be highlighted either in blue color or in some other color to tell you that that word is part of the sentence, but if you click that one, you go to another text, another concept in much more elaborately dealt design, and then you go on and on. Sometimes you get lost, and then you have to come back to the original text. And this indicates that the inexhaustible sources of knowledge can be presented in many different ways with enough flexibility. Now, I was thinking about some familiar example, story within a story. That is a kind of hypertext. Epics like Ramayana and Mahabharata, they have so many branches. I mean, such a hiatus of stories and stories and stories. And it was the genius of the composers of these two epics to build all of them around a central theme and at the same time bring in different stories which can exist independently, but they also form part of the theme. And as far as the complexity is concerned, if you read Mahabharata, you read about so many characters, so many wars, so many conflicts, so many events, but there is one text within Mahabharata, that is Bhagavad Gita. If you read Bhagavad Gita, you know the context. Arjuna getting a sermon on dharma from Lord Krishna. But then it is so abstract, so complex, with so many philosophical ideas, so many concepts of ethics, dharma, etc., etc. Now, how to explain this at the most complex level? That can be done with the help of the events that develop in Mahabharata itself. So it's a good, I think it is an example as to how to move from the introductory to the more advanced level of understanding a particular principle or a particular concept, a particular philosophy. Advanced knowledge acquisition, learning beyond the introductory stage for a subject area, comes with massive experience. Neglected intermediate stage, the aims and means of advanced knowledge acquisition is a very different exercise altogether. You can't advance to a higher level without acquiring sufficient clarity at the introductory stage. And in subjects like algebra geometry, or in any science subject for that matter, you have to build stage by stage. If you don't understand the basic principles, basic concepts, you cannot move forward and understand the higher subjects, and therefore it goes stage by stage. But it need not be the case in every discipline, that we have to be aware of. First, you start with an introductory lesson, then you set your goal, then what kind of exposure you have to that particular content to achieve the goal, and at some point in learning about the knowledge domain, the goal must change, because your goal cannot remain constantly at the lower level. And some point students must get it right, that is advanced knowledge. And questions and obstacles may upset them, but they have to overcome. You have to find answers yourself. The text may not give you immediately. Obstacles are given as problems in the form of problems, and the problems will have to be solved. Unless these are done, you cannot proceed towards a higher level knowledge. That's what it means. Complexity and the increasing ill structuredness are crucial concepts. The methods are at odds usually. Medical school, for example, is an archetype of an advanced knowledge acquisition setting introductory exposure. You are not yet an expert, but you have to do the job of an expert. How will you do that? So you have to move cautiously to acquire more complex knowledge. The goals of medical education are stated in general terms. Advanced knowledge acquisition in terms of conceptual complexity must be mastered. See, we see in everyday life there are specialists and specialists and specialists. But when it comes to, say, heart surgery, you always think of a famous surgeon. No, I must go to that surgeon. All others have the same degrees, same institutions have given them, the same Medical Council of India has recognized. Everything is the same, but X, Dr. X is preferred. Dr. Y is preferred next. So there is a gradation given to the doctors by the people. Why? Because it depends on their ability to apply knowledge from formal instructions to real world cases. Biomedical science concepts and the misconceptions surrounding them will have to be clearly identified and understood. Failures of understanding the complex and compound subjects will lead to disasters. See, for example, a number of misconceptions can be identified. Oversimplification of complex and irregular structure, then over reliance on a single basis for mental representation, over reliance on top down processing, context independent of conceptual representation, over reliance on pre-compiled knowledge structures, rigid compartmentalization of knowledge components, passive transmission of knowledge from one to the other. I mean, these are some of the examples, and you can look for explanations in any standard book what the oversimplifications are. Self-medication is one dangerous area. You just consult some dictionary or medical dictionary and then you decide on something. It is oversimplification. Cognitive flexibility is extremely important for knowledge transferability. You have to avoid oversimplification and over-regularization. Multiple representations of the same concepts or same content will have to be there. Centrality of cases will have to be explained. Conceptual knowledge as knowledge in use is more important than the knowledge that exists in a text. A schema assembly, that is, the mental constructs of that knowledge should be from rigidity to flexibility. It's not the other way around. The moment it becomes rigid, then the mind does not move towards a newer knowledge. So, cognitive flexibility theory believes in non-compartmentalization of concepts and cases. It encourages active participation, tutorial guidance, and adjunct support for the management of complexity. So, to sum up, flexibility theory in cognitivism recognizes various difficulties at the advanced level of acquiring knowledge, the complexities of the concepts in any subject, and deliberately it leaves the content yield structured with the sole purpose of allowing the students to remain flexible to move from the introductory to the intermediary to the most advanced levels, keeping in view the need to allow interplay of principles and concepts with one another to understand better and construct new knowledge and new ideas and then apply them in real life situation. Thank you.